trait of being low income, etc. Right. So the Democratic Party has always had to have numerous planks in its electoral platform, and those planks would be for each of the parties or each of the constituent groups within their constituency, and how many and how strong the planks would be depended upon the party's perception of the importance and the significance of the group that they wanted to put a plank in the platform for. Been viewed as a constituent group within the Democratic Party that could be satisfied with essentially one plank. On occasion they might add an additional one, but for the most part we were a one plank constituency. You could satisfy us by giving us one plank. Usually that plank had to have something to do with employment. So in the early stages, for example, one of my most vivid recollections was back in the 1960s after the insurrection started breaking out in American cities every summer. It was automatic that one of the planks would always be that there would be summer jobs for black youth, for inner city youth. They didn't call them black. Summer jobs for inner city youth. The theory being that if you kept these children employed so that they can earn a little bit of money during these long hot summers, the summers might not get so hot because the students who might otherwise raise some hell, would be satisfied to be making a little money and jingling in their pockets, whatever the case may be. So, and then of course we went into the era of affirmative action, and affirmative action became the paramount plank that the Democratic Party would include, in its platform in order to convince or persuade or satisfy its black constituency that the party was looking out for us. Not until this most recent campaign season, when Barack Obama emerged as the party's most likely prospect to be the nominee, did we not have any of the major candidates for the nomination of either party who saw fit to offer even a single platform to the black community. The one that there was an attempt to put on the table as a possible plank was, of course, reparations for slavery. And if you'll recall, in the very first debates, when both parties still had a lot of candidates, aspiring, that question was put to the candidates of both parties as the last, almost an also ran question as to where they stood on reparations for slavery. And all of them rejected the idea of supporting reparations for slavery, with one exception, and that was Dennis Kucinich from, I believe, Illinois or Ohio. I'm not sure he's from, but Dennis Kucinich was the only candidate of either party who said that he would support reparations for slavery. Every other candidate, including Barack Obama, more or less emphatically stated that they did not and would not under any circumstances support reparations for slavery. That should have told black people something. Yes. But for most of us, I think we didn't pay any attention to that at all, except for the reparations people, those of us who understand the reparations issue. We knew that that was significant and that was telling. So we could then begin to look at this prospective candidate, Barack Obama, through this lens or through this prism of a supposedly black candidate who didn't even support what would perhaps be the most significant issue that could be supported or advocated for on behalf of black people. I maintain, for example, that from that standpoint, we would probably have been better off with Hillary Clinton or one of the other candidates, but probably Hillary Clinton, because she was the other most likely person to get the nomination as the nominee, because when it's a white candidate, we have the position, and we're in a position, I should say, we have the leverage of using race with white candidates, you see. We can almost imply that they would be racist if they did not do something that we felt strongly that they ought to do. You can't use that argument with a black candidate. And we learned that in previous decades when the big issue was getting the first black mayor or the first black congressperson and these sorts of things. And we found out that, in effect, we did ourselves a disservice oftentimes by supporting the so-called black candidate because we couldn't use the issue of race on that person because it was no way, presumably, that a black person could be a racist, especially in terms of against black people. So we neutralized our strongest and most effective weapon in the political sense when we did that. And that's what happened with Barack Obama. So now Barack Obama, once he won, and let me back up a moment because this is very important for us to recall in retrospect. Because most of us are not caught up in the euphoria of this man's victory, then we forget from whence he and we came.
Correct.
Until when Barack Obama his name was first floated out there as a possible candidate for the nomination, that was poo-pooed almost universally by black folks in this country.
Correct.
Across the board.
Yes.
Especially the black political elites and the black civil rights aristocracy. These two camps, who are very much intermingled with each other, both denounced even the suggestion of Barack Obama because he had only just come on the scene a year or two before that. And the main reason he had a name at all was because he had come out of nowhere and won a U.S. Senate seat, from Illinois. And few people outside of Illinois had even heard of the guy before, and he had no civil rights credentials.
At all.
In other words, he had never been a part of the movement which had elevated black people and our interests to the position that top-level politicians had to even give us any consideration at all. So he was rejected, or the very thought, I should say, of his running as a possible candidate was thrown out. Everybody was of the conviction that the right to be the Democratic Party's nominee this time around had been earned by Hillary Clinton because she agreed to back out the previous time to leave the way clear for what turned out to be John Kerry, with the understanding that next time around it would be hers. So shall we say, the politically inclined black folks in this country, their support was for Hillary, and they saw Barack Obama as an upstart, very presumptive to try to throw his name into the ring because he hadn't earned his stripes or paid his dues. It was not until Barack Obama was imposed upon the country as a likely candidate and one of the candidates for the Democratic Party's nomination that they even begun to take him seriously. And even then, the opposition became even more stringent. You may recall that he was accused of being not black enough. In fact, that was the quote that the media picked up on, that the black folks were saying this guy was not black enough. Rank and file black folks were saying he wasn't really a black American, he was an African because his father was an African, not an African American or a black American. So they even used that against the guy. And he had some audacity to think that he could come out of nowhere with no experience, no history, no track record, not paying any dues or not earned his stripes at all, and then present himself for the top position in the land. Black folks said we knew who we would want to be the first black to be in that position if in fact we were going to be able to get someone into that position. It wouldn't be this guy. But what happened was he won Iowa. And when he won the Iowa caucuses, black folks had to sit up and take notice. Now, why did black people feel obliged to sit up and take notice because this man won Iowa? Because there are no black folks in Iowa. I think one of the comedians said there's only 2.5 black people in the whole state of Iowa. So for him to win the Iowa caucuses said one thing: white people would support this guy. And if you'll recall, the reason why we were convinced that Jesse Jackson's candidacy or campaigning for the nomination could only be symbolic